R script. If you open the R script, you will now see an interface like this. Never mind about the color. I'll tell you how to play around with the color and the themes. But nonetheless, the window that you're having should be more or less like what I'm having here. If you want to play around with the color or the theme, so that you have something that looks more or less the same as mine, just come here to Tools, and then we have Global Options, and then you can come to Appearance, and then from here you can either select the theme from up here. You can talk about sky. If you want to zoom to 80% or 75%, and then there are now different types of themes that you can select depending with the color that you want. So this one is something that you can do it on your own. You can do the classic. And then if you find a theme that works well with you, just click on Add. So you can click to apply. Just come down there, you click Apply, and you realize that now the interface will change. I believe for my case now we're having more or less the same, but I'm one person who I appreciate dark themes, so I'll go back, go to classic, select this one. Yes. I'll prefer this one for now. Okay. Now let's jump to now understanding the various interface of the software as far as our language is concerned, the R programming language. Good. Now, there are 4 main interfaces in the program R. R will be working in 4 main interfaces. We have the first interface, which is called the script. We have the first interface, which is called the script. We have the second one, which is called the R console. We have the environment, and then we have packages. When you're dealing with R, we'll be focusing on 4 main areas. We have the R script, we have the console, we have the environment, and we have the packages. The R script is the first interface you're seeing here. And in this interface, this is the place whereby you'll be writing your commands. All commands, you write them in the R script. And if you write your command on the R script, your results will be displayed in the second interface, which is down here. And that interface is called the R console. You write your command on the R script, results will be displayed below here, where we are having the R console. You can also write your command in the R console, and if you execute it, you will still have your results displayed on the console. Let me clarify that. We'll be working with R script. That's where we're going to write our command. And every time we write our command in the R script, the results will be displayed down here in the R console. Also, you can write commands in the console and still see the results still at the console. We'll be talking about the advantages of writing on the script and also the disadvantage of maybe writing on the console. Let's talk about the environment. Environment is the interface whereby you'll be able to see your variables. And in this case, I know I'm calling them variables, but in R, we'll be talking about objects. Why objects? Because we'll be working with what we call OPP. And OOP stands for Object-Oriented Programming. That means we'll be creating objects as we now facilitate our programming. So all our objects or variables, or even data sets, if you want to call them that way, we will be able to access them or to see them from the environment. Just like the way we, in both SPSS and Stata, I think in SPSS you used to talk about variable view, where you're seeing a variable. Instead, I think you had an interface whereby you could see all your variable, the variable view. So same case applies here. All the objects and variables that we'll create, they will all be displayed at the environment. Let's come to the fourth interface, which is the packages. And for packages, we can say that R can be able to perform its function, or it can run analysis thanks to now what we call packages. And packages are inbuilt functions that are meant to perform certain types of tasks. So we'll be downloading and installing various packages, and these packages are the one which will enable us to perform certain tasks. And I think the reason why they say R can do anything, there's no if, is because R contain packages that cut across any discipline. Okay? So we'll be seeing how to install packages, what are these packages, what can they do, and how do you work around the packages. Now, let's go to now understanding R script. Now that we know we have the R script, we have the console, we have the environment, and then we have the packages. So for packages, we're leaving it for now. Let's jump to now dealing with commands. And we have to understand the rules of writing a command. And in R, or in any programming language, there are two things you need to understand. One, we have what we call a command, and we have what we call a comment. So in programming, you'll be writing two things. You write a command, or you write a comment. Either you'll write a command, or you will write a comment. And commands are instructions that can be interpreted by the software. And once they are interpreted, you can be able to get an output or a result out of that command or the instruction. That said, commands are instructions which can be interpreted by the computer or the software. And after the interpretation, the software will return to you some results. Comments are instructions which they are not going to be interpreted by the software, but instead they explain what the commands are intending to do. So if you want to do descriptive statistics, it's always advisable that you should comment and say, yes, the next line of code that I'm writing is the code that will give me descriptive statistics. So you'll be writing comment. Now, how do you differentiate between a comment and a command? Comment, you will start by writing, you will start by hashtag. That indicates that the line that you're about to write is not a command, it's a comment. So let me try that. Let me come here, my R script. I'll put there a comment. And then I'll have to introduce my R script so that somebody will understand what it's all about. So I will write there, download science online. Note here, the color is a bit different. I think most of you in your side, maybe you're seeing it green in color, depending with the theme. But you realize that when you start with a hashtag, the color of this command, it will be a bit different as when you write your commands in, when you're writing your commands, not comments. So I've already introduced my script, and then I will now go again and indicate or comment on what I'm about to do. So I want to say hello to the world. I want to print some hello world so that you can see how to deal with commands. I want to print hello world. Okay, there's nothing much about hello world. It's just a string. And I'll come here and then I comment and I'll write there printing hello world R. That's a comment, not a command. Now let me write a command that can enable me to print hello world. And the rules of writing any command, commands you don't start with an hashtag. When you're writing commands, you don't start with an hashtag. You just write the line of code. And then also, commands are always written in lowercase. Commands are always written in lowercase. But comment, you can write the way you want. There's no rules for writing any comment. But for commands, you have no choice but to write them in lowercase. In my case, I will come here and write the command for writing hello world. So I'll tell the software print. The beauty of RStudio is it will give you a hint. As you can see, I've just written print and already something pops up for me. So I have a hint here. I'll say print and then open bracket. Just write there print, open bracket, introduce a speech marks. I'll explain why we're introducing a speech marks. And then write there hello world. Hello world is a string. I believe at this stage, if I talk about string, we understand what it means because we have covered all these things during our beginners class, which is now the statistical packaging. And the same way you are doing in Excel. If you're not very well in Excel, you could not write, if anything is not a number, then you have no choice but to introduce speech marks. So I've written here, the command I've used is called print. And the element is, I want the software to print for me, hello world. Now, how do we execute a command? There are three ways of executing a command. The first one is at the end of your line of code, you can highlight the entire line of code. Then you come here and you click run. If you look at my console, there's this white line written hello world, meaning the software has print for me hello world. So the first way of executing a command is you highlight the entire line, come and click run. The second way, if you click on this number, the index number for that line of code, which is 3. So if I click on 3, the entire line of code is highlighted and I can be able to click run. Same case, you can see from the console that the software keeps on printing for me hello world. The third one, and I think is the most preferred one, and moving forward, I will highly recommend that we be doing like this. At the end of a line of code, just press Control and then also the Enter button. At the end of the line of code, press Control and then Enter. You realize I'm still getting the same results, which is now printed hello world. Okay. Now, up to this point, you know how to write a comment, you know how to write a command, and you also know how to execute a command. And this time, you know how to execute a command from the R script. Remember a while back I said, apart from the console being the interface whereby you'll just be seeing your results, you can also run commands at the console and still get the results at the console. Let's attempt to do the same thing that you have done in the script, but this time let's do it at the console. So let's instruct the software to print for us hello world, but this time we're not writing it from the script, but rather from the console. So if you come here, my cursor is down there. I will just instruct the software to print hello world. Now, to execute commands, from the console, you will not use the control button. All you have to do is at the end of that line, just press enter. Just press enter. Just press enter. And you realize that you're still seeing hello world. Take home here is you can still run your command at the console and you get the results. It's much easier to run your command at the console because all you have to do is just press enter at the end of your line of code. Now the question is, why scripts and why console? The beauty of running a command from the R script is because you will be in a position to save your R script. This file, you can save it. You can even share, you can send it to someone. That means you can write lines of codes here, send it to someone, and someone can be able to execute them from wherever they are, even with their own computer. That means you can save your work here. If you write from the console, you will not be able to save your work contained in the console. So to be on the safe side, it's always advisable that you write on the script, since once you're done with now writing all your lines of codes, it's much easier for you to share with somebody else, and they can be able to execute your line of codes from wherever they are. Another thing, for R script, it's easy to communicate because you have a chance to comment. That means somebody can read through and understand your line of code because you have to comment up here and then you write a line of code, as opposed to R console, whereby you just write the codes, and maybe when you're dealing with some complex type of analysis, it might not be easy for someone to read or to understand maybe what you have been doing. Instead, they'll just be seeing lines of codes and they may not even be able to understand what those codes were. So for R script, it's good because you can comment and then you write a code, as opposed to the R console. Up to that point, is there a question for me? Any question or concern? Good. Now, let's move. We start now understanding a bit of code. We write some few lines. Let's write some few lines. So here, you have just understand how to print hello world, which is just to say hello to the world. Now, let's jump into creating variable. Let's see the concept of creating variable in R, how it works. Of course, I will comment there. Then I'll say creating variables. And I'll still comment and say, so I'm creating variable, and the variable that I'm creating, let me say I want to start with variable. I'm creating variable. Before we even talk about creating variable, let's print some numbers. Let's understand how to print some numbers because we already print some string characters here. So here we are just saying print hello world. Hello world is a string. How about to print some numbers? So if you want to print some numbers, so that we can differentiate between when to print a number and when to print a string. When you're dealing with a string, you have to use the command print. But for instance, if you want to print numbers, and these numbers you want maybe numbers from 1 to 250, for instance, you will not say print and then indicate the number. If you want to print numbers, all you have to do is, so let's comment so that you can be able to understand. Comment here and say printing numbers from 1 to 150. So I just want the software to display for me those numbers, just like the way it has displayed for me, hello world. If you want to print numbers, let's say 1 to 250, all you have to do is write there 1, and then introduce colon, full colon, and then write there 250. You want to print numbers, and these numbers are within a range of 1 to 250. And then at the end of that line, so just control and enter. You realize that down here, the software has printed for you numbers from 1 all the way to 250. The same way you just printed hello world. Okay. So we understand two things: how to print numbers and also how to print strings. Nothing much. We're just trying to understand the language and how to execute commands. Now let's come to creating variable. Variable. Actually, we call them variable for now, but after some time, once we learn a little bit, we'll realize that what we are creating are not variables, but rather they are something called objects. Let's say creating variable stock object R. And I want to start by creating an object X or a variable X. And I want X to have numbers between 1 to 50. I want object X to have numbers between 1 and 50. And to do that, I will be using or introducing to you guys something called assignment function. There's something called an assignment function. And basically with the assignment function, it's a function which assigns things to an object. So in this case, we are creating an object called X, and we will be assigning numbers from 1 to 50 into this object called X. Okay? We are creating an object X, and in this object, we are going to assign the numbers 1 to 50. So to do that, I will come here and write the X, the name of the variable. And then assignment function, you will introduce the less than sign and the dash. You can see from my screen, I have the less than sign and the dash. And then what am I assigning? I'll introduce bracket, then I'll say 1 full colon 50. The same way we just printed this one, but in this case, we are not just printing numbers 1 to 50. We are assigning numbers 1 to 50 into an object called X. If I execute that line of code, you realize that up here on the environment, remember we talked about the environment, and we said the environment is where we'll be able to see our objects and variables. And from Up here, you can see that I have an object X. And here I'm told that X is an int. Int stands for an integer. So X contains integers. And the next thing that I want to see, assuming you want to see the element of X. So here you'll not be able to see the numbers all the way to the end. So let me come here on the comment section. And then I will write there browsing elements browsing elements object X. I want to see the elements of object X. I can see what are the elements of object X. And to see elements of an object, if you want to see what is contained in an object or a variable, all you have to do is write the name of that object. In this case, the name of my object is X. I just come here and write X. Execute that by Control Enter. You realize that at the console, I now have numbers 1 all the way to 50. Let's remind ourselves. So we have talked about a variable X, how to create a variable, or you can call it an object. And say our object X contains numbers 1 to 50. And also, after you have created the variable X, which you can be able to see from the environment, you can also check elements of the variable X. You can be able to check the elements of variable X. And for you to check elements of variable X, all you have to do is just write the name of that variable. Let's proceed and create another variable. And I think I'll ask a question so to see if you're on the same page. Let me start with Ernest. There is what we call to concatenate. What do you understand by the term concatenate, Ernest?
Excuse, you said concatenate.
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Laban, ushaisikia concatenate in mathematics? It's not an English word, it's something in maths. Okay. Let's learn this thing called concatenate. So I want to create a variable, and maybe in that variable you want to have specific numbers. So when you say concatenate is more like addition, but this time it's not like you are adding those numbers. So you are concatenate basically means to bring together. You want to create an element, or an object. Let's call that object Y, and then you want object Y to have numbers, let's say 5, 10, 15, and 20. You realize that you will not tell the software that add for me 5, 10, 15, and 20 in an object called Y, but instead you will say concatenate 5, 10, 15, and 20 into an object called Y. Now let's comment so that we see what that means. So let me just say creating variable using the concatenate function. See how do we apply that? We're creating a variable Y using the concatenate function. And I say to concatenate basically means bring together. And in this case, I'm bringing together the numbers 5, 15, 5, 10, 15, and 20. And the name of that object, I want to call it y. So let me come here and call y, introduce the assignment function, and then concatenate function is denoted by letter C. Remember, I said all commands are always in lowercase. Commands are always in lowercase. So C, or the concatenate, you'll have to use the small letter C because it's a function. And then I will introduce bracket. And then I'll say I have 5, comma, 10, comma, 15, and then 20. So the reason why we're saying concatenate is not like when you say add. We're not saying add 5, 10, 15, and 20 into y. It will mean something else. But instead, we want the software to show us that this object y has elements 5, 10, 15, and 20. If I execute that line of code, realize that at the environment, I now see variable y. Environment, I'm now seeing variable y. And of course, if you want to check elements of variable y, right there, browsing elements of object y. To browse elements of an object, just write the name of that object. Execute, you realize that at my console, I now have 5, 10, 15, and then 20. We'll also be doing some addition. That means if you create objects with concatenate function, you can also do what you call some basic math. And I think that we'll be doing later. But even nonetheless, we can do it now. So let me create another object called Z. I still want it to have 4 items or 4 elements. And then you see how to do additions or basic math using objects. So you can create an object Z, create an object Z, use the assignment function, use the assignment function, and then this time I want you to have elements of your choice. You don't necessarily need to have exactly as mine. We have created an object Z. My object Z has I've deliberately created elements 23, 10, 5, and 2. I execute that, getting an error. The reason I'm getting an error is because I forgot to place concatenate the C function there. If I add the C function for concatenate, and then I execute that, C Z. There's a comma I'm forgetting here. That's the beauty of programming language. You have to be very careful. A small mistake, or you forget even a simple thing as a comma, that's not the beginning of problem. You'll have to spend hours trying to find out why you're getting those errors. So I've already fixed mine. If I execute it, now you can see from the R environment, I can now be able to see element an object Z. And as you can see, also the Z is there. So if you want to check elements of object Z, just write there Z. Remember, Z is in caps. Enter. And as you can see, we have the elements displayed there. Let me talk about basic math. basic math R. Talk about basic math. This way now you can be able to do calculation using R. That means R can act as a calculator. It performs for you any type of maths. When I say basic math, that is a very relative term. It's basic to me, might not be basic to you. But nonetheless, R can be able to do for you all those calculations. In this case, maybe you talk about 8 plus 4. Execute that command. You realize the software is telling me it's 12. You want to do 4 multiplied by 6. Execute that. You realize that the software now gives me what? It gives me 24. I want to say 3 raised to power 2 using double star. If I execute that, it tells me it's 9. So these are examples of basic math. That means you can perform any mathematical calculation using R. And not only just on numbers, but you can also do calculations for objects. For instance, I want to see, or I want to do an addition of object Y and Z. I want to do calculation for objects. I'll just write the name of the object as Z. Execute that. You will see that I'm getting results of 28, 20, 20, and 22. That means I've added 5 plus 23, 10 plus 10, 15 plus 5, 20 plus 2. Just like the way we normally do the addition for matrix. You can also create elements. So you can also create objects based on certain addition. Now, I'll use an example. Let me create another object. Let me call it object A. And I want object A to be the addition of object Y and Z. I'm creating an object called A. And I want object A to be the addition of object Y and Z. To do that, I will write there A, because that's the object that I'm creating, introduce the assignment function, and then inside the bracket, I will now do the basic math, which is Y plus Z. And if I execute that, you realize that I have now an object called A. If I proceed and check the elements of object A by just writing there A, and enter, you realize that I'm getting now 28, 20, 20. Good. Up to that point, is there a question for me? Any question for me?
We have a question.
Go on.
Well, I don't know how you are going through writing the comment, like the hashtag. Then because I've tried it on my end and it's not capturing the hashtag.
Okay. So it depends with the computer you're using, but just at the R script, if you just shift and use the number 3, I think that's the standard for most of the computers. Shift number 3, you'll be able to have comment on the script. I think you can also comment using star. You can use star. Now shift 8, and that's something which the software cannot be able to run. If you're having a problem with your keyboard, you can just go to the search icon and then right there keyboard. And you'll be able to see the on-screen keyboard. If you select it, you can be able to use use this one. But this is if your keyboard has problem. Otherwise, if your keyboard is okay, all you have to do is click on the script. You can be able to have the hashtag. So I think that's something that I will leave you to attempt it before our next class. Any other question? Good. Up to that point, we'll not add more. I think it's a good start for our class. So I will leave my class there. The next time we're meeting, I would start by now telling you guys to be writing these commands. So I want you to go and master this, whatever we have covered today, because the next thing is we'll pick from here. And today I'm not showing you how to save your work. Why? Because in our next class is where now I'll show you how to save your work. So between now and the next class, make sure you master all these things that you have covered here. And by the time yes. Go on, Belinda.
Excuse me.
I can hear you.
If you had already installed the R in the beginner's class, do you need to download it again? Hello?
You said you are installed in the beginner's class.
Hello?
Yes, Belinda, I can hear you. What is your question? Belinda, if you're still there,
I had already been installed the R software. Can I send a message instead? In the chat section.
So, Belinda, you can reach out to that phone number and they'll be able to help you towards the installation. But nonetheless, I think the first thing we're doing in this class was to install the software. So there's a procedure which I've just taken you guys through towards the installation of software. But nonetheless, if you're struggling with the installation, just reach out to this number and they'll be able to help you. I hope all of us were in the class WhatsApp group, so I'll be doing most of the communication there concerning our next session and also for the timetable. For now, I want to wish you a good day ahead, and I'll be communicating on when we're going to have our next class. So thank you all for your time.